I'm here.
Okay. All right, so we're live. And Bobby, you're still on the call with us?
Yes.
All right, super. So good morning to Felicia French and Bobby Tyler. This is Natalie with Sister District San Francisco, and we're thrilled to have you both on the interview today. We did make the interview available live, so people can join us if they have the link. But we're recording it as well so that we can share it with our volunteers who won't be able to join us live today, so that they can learn a little bit more about our candidates. So we're trying to make this kind of conversational. So it's you know, a little bit free form, but we have about 45 minutes to go through all of the questions and then leave a little time for folks if there are people joining us that want to ask additional questions. But that's kind of roughly the schedule for this morning. And we kind of just break down the questions where we're going through kind of a little bit of your background and then some issues in the state of Arizona, some details about your campaign, and then lastly, what is helpful for you from Sister District in terms of the kind of support we can give you. So with that said, thank you again for joining, and I'll start the first question. I'll actually put to Bobby since he's on the phone and remote. Bobby, would you mind giving us a quick sort of 2-minute bio about yourself and specifically what inspired you to run, and then maybe 1 or 2 things that you really want to get done once you're elected?
Hello, my name is Bobby Tyler. I'm currently the mayor of Holbrook. Some of the things that inspired me to run was, of course, living here in rural Arizona was our local officials just more or less forgot about northern Arizona. When we look at our health care, our jobs, and our education system. And so those are some of the things that just looking in, living in rural Arizona has really been effective. One of the first things that, of course, we want to attack is our, start to work on is, of course, is our education and to refund our education system, because living up here in rural Arizona, we don't have too many private schools. And so it's taken away from the public schools in this area. The other concern is our health care, and so to provide a better quality health care for all and affordable health care and also affordable housing here within the area.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Felicia, can you share a little bit about yourself and what motivated you to run, and then also what maybe 1 or 2 of your top issues are?
Okay, I'm a 32-year veteran of the Army and Arizona Army National Guard. I'm also a registered nurse, a medevac helicopter pilot, a sustainability scientist, an educator, and a mother. What motivated me was that similar to Bobby, the rural area is not represented well. And when I got out of the military, I saw how disjointed our leadership was and how gridlocked and how much divisiveness there is. So I decided to run the think globally, act locally action here. And one of the issues that Bobby just discussed, education, sustainable funding of our public education long-term, and affordable and accessible healthcare for everyone in the rural area, as well as our infrastructure. We need to look at for building our infrastructure up, and specifically renewable energy jobs, transitioning to them. So those are some of the things.
Great. And then in terms of education and renewable jobs and some of the issues that you've talked about, do you think there's strong support for those from the community members? Are those the things that when you're canvassing and talking to people on the phone, are those the issues that are coming up for you from your constituents?
Yes. Renewables have, living here within rural Arizona, we live within 120 miles of 4 coal-fired power plants. And so when you look at the renewable pictures with the grid here, Arizona being a sunshine state, renewables that's on the front page of everybody's mind because of the jobs and also the clean jobs which are going in that direction as well.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
as far as those are the issues that everyone's talking about. Mostly education, though. No matter where who answers the door, it's Republican, Democrat, or Independent, they're all concerned about funding public education.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing that. And then just one thing you could share about yourself personally that you think would be helpful for voters and volunteers to know about you. So not necessarily something about your political campaign efforts, but just something about you personally.
You want to go first, Felicia?
Sure. I thought we were going to do an order. So, all right. So go ahead, Bobby. We'll just, so that would makes it easier.
Okay.
We won't be jumping over each other.
One of the things that I want the voters to know, or everybody to know about me, is I am third generation here in Arizona. Not only third generation in Arizona, but third generation living here in rural Arizona. And by living here in rural Arizona for all these years and seeing my grandparents and my great grandparents and all the things that they contributed here to this area, and my parents contributing for all the years, I understand the needs of the people here in rural Arizona. I have a lot of skin in the game, and so that's why one of the things I want the people to know about me. One of the other things that I wanted to share with the voters, and Felicia and I were talking about it the other day, was our commitment here to the area. We've been so committed that I was talking to them the other day about all the miles that we've walked so far. And so one of the things that I was sharing with them is that when I started this a few years ago, my father, from a health issue, lost one of his leg. And so he told me to throw his shoes away. And so when I started to throw his shoes away, I thought about it, and I never threw them away, and I kept them. And so for the last year, I've been wearing his shoes. And so one of the reasons why I wanted to share that with you is that keeps me grounded. It keeps me grounded for I'm walking in my father's footsteps, and I have big shoes to fill. And so those are one of the things I want people to know, that I am committed to the area.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Bobby. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's incredible.
Welcome. You're welcome.
Go ahead. I don't know if there's a time delay or not. It sounds like there is. One of the things I want people to know most about me is that I'm not a politician. This is my first time running for office. I'm a public servant. I served 32 years in the military and as a public servant, and I genuinely care about the issues. I'm very compassionate about them. I'm not worried about the politics of things so much as taking care of people at the end and our environment. Those are the most important things, and as a public servant, we should all be looking out for those, the greater good of our people as well as the environment.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. So maybe drilling in a little bit into Arizona and your role as state legislators once you're elected. Do you feel like, let's see, I'm going to adjust something really quick here. What do you see as the role of the state legislature in addressing the issues in your district specifically?
As a legislator, some of the roles that here is, of course, the biggest one is listening to the people of our district, being that voice for rural Arizona. I feel has been missed, and so I think that would be one of the largest issues that I see facing the first few months in office.
As far as I'm concerned, similar to Bobby, of course, we agree on so many things. That's why we're running you can vote for two, and there's two of us running. The legislators, obviously, they make the laws and policies that affect the entire state, not just our district. And that is very important to me, to represent not just the people who vote for me and for us, it's the people who didn't vote at all, and those who hopefully we encourage them to vote next election, and the people who voted against us, because the term representative means that you represent the people of your district, not just your base that voted for you. So that's what's so important to me as a legislator, and that's what we need to do.
That's great. So in terms of your particular district, you mentioned that it's a rural district. What what do you see specifically in the district that is very unique from other parts of Arizona? What are some characteristics of your district that you think make it very distinct?
Some of the issues that make our issue that makes our district very unique is our location to all the reservations. We're within 120 miles of at least 4 major reservations, and so that makes us a little bit unique to have a working relationship with all the tribes here in the area, and so that makes us a little bit unique here in the area. The other thing, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Bob.
Okay. Some of the other things that make our area is very unique, is different from other, is when you look at the state as a whole, you're looking at all the opportunities that from eastern Arizona, from Tucson, all the job opportunities that the state has developed in that area. You look at Yuma and all the opportunities that have been developed in that area, and you look at the Cayman area. We have 4 corners of our state. Our state has really developed those areas, and they have forgot about rural Arizona. When you forget about rural Arizona, you're forgetting about the jobs, you're forgetting about the infrastructure, and so we're really hurting in this area. When I talk about forgetting about an area, when you have a community and they don't have natural gas, and we're living in 2018, there's something going on in our state that we have to fix, because that's hurting our area for growth, opportunities, and jobs.
Absolutely. Thank you. Felicia?
Yeah, yes, we're definitely a rural area compared to other places in the state. The largest city we have is Flagstaff, which is 70-something thousand people. The rest are much smaller. I think the next largest is Payson, which is around 14,000. So we're very rural, and the issues are like the infrastructure, like Bobby said. One of the things that we all take for granted in the rest of the state is broadband access and internet, reliable self-service, and broadband. Those are oftentimes they go out here and we don't have access to it. So it's not only problematic from an emergency standpoint, not being able to call 911 or get emergency aid, as well as our students having access to internet to research and all that. So it's problematic in the education sector. But and then as far as healthcare, we don't have access to emergency rooms everywhere or medevac. And so things like telemedicine would be helpful in getting incentivizing doctors and nurse practitioners to come out to the rural area to help us, so that the population doesn't have to drive all the way to Phoenix or Flagstaff, which is quite far, and sometimes there's a huge time constraint, obviously, if you have an emergency. So those are some of the areas and issues in addition to what Bobby just stated.
So is there are there trauma centers in your district, or are they out of district, or are they very limited because of the rural nature of your district?
They're very rural in our district. A lot we have a Summit Healthcare that's 45 miles from Holbrook. Then you have Flagstaff Hospital, which is 92 miles. You have Winslow, which is Colorado, Little Colorado River Hospital, which is 30 miles. But when you have an incident, of course, they take you to the first closest hospital, which is a trauma center in Flagstaff. And a lot of times it's you're airbagged out down to Phoenix or to Albuquerque, to the closest major city. And so those needs for healthcare is very needed up here in rural Arizona, because when you look at the location of Flagstaff, we still have a lot of Arizona still left up here in northern Arizona that covers the reservations.
And in healthcare, you have that golden hour. If somebody can't get the care in that first hour, we call it the golden hour, the survivability is less likely if they don't get definitive medical care within that hour after a trauma. And on top of that, the preventive medicine, we don't have this quality preventive medicine here. You know, the healthcare providers here to see patients on a regular basis, so somebody can go and get their annual regular checkups, or if there's something wrong before it becomes more problematic and into a more severe diagnosis and more fatal. So those are some of the things that we really need to look at getting up here, you know, accessible and affordable healthcare for everyone. And that includes preventive medicine and emergency medicine.
Because when a lot of times when people talk about medicine and preventive medicine up here in rural Arizona, there's an element of that a lot of times we overlook, and that element is the family. And so when you have a family member that is very ill, you want to go and visit that family member. And so when you have to travel 3 and 4 hours to go visit that family member, that becomes a hardship onto the family. And so there's a lot of us families up here who are facing that. And so we would love to have something closer just for those purposes, so you can visit your family that's ill.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. You know, you're thinking about medical care in terms of acuteness and treating a very specific thing, but longer term, just having a network and being able to support a family member when they have taken ill, that's definitely something that doesn't really get discussed or attention, but is totally dependent on how accessible they are.
Yes. And Felicia, she had the opportunity to be out here on the reservation, and she saw that firsthand as well.
Yeah, I did 5 years of research on the reservation, Navajo reservation, and yeah, it was very sad to see that everything's so spread out. It's very hard. Even the roads are very difficult to their dirt and sometimes impassable during when the monsoon season, or they get very muddy or snow fall. They can't get through. And so we've had to use the National Guard in the past to air evac, even insulin supplies and things like that out there, pay for the sheep and cattle. So it's extremely rural in this area.
Wow, amazing. So thank you for sharing that and giving us a little bit of a better sense of the district that you're both running to represent and support. Let's change gears a little bit and talk more about your specific campaign. So we know that you, Felicia and Bobby, you're running on the same ticket for the House of Representatives seats in Legislative District 6. And in Arizona, of course, there are 2 House of Representative seats for each district, in addition to the senator. Can you give us a, we'll start with Bobby, but this is a kind of a combined thing since you're running on the same ticket. Could you give us a sense of how big your actual staff is for your campaign, and then also how many dedicated volunteers you have there in Arizona for your campaign?
On my campaign, I have a campaign manager, finance manager, about 10 volunteers at this time. I have one media person who's taking care of all my Facebook, and also I have a finance director down in Phoenix that's handling all my campaign accounts. And so my campaign is probably around 15 people.
Great, thank you.
On volunteers.
Yes, mine is similar to Bobby's. We do have 5 paid members from the Arizona Democratic Legislative Campaign Committee that are committed to all 3 candidates. Wade Carlisle, this for the House, Senate, and I'm sorry, State Senate, Bobby and myself. And then I have the rest of mine are volunteers. I have 3 full-time volunteers. One of them is my daughter, who's my communications director, Anna, and then we have a treasurer who is Bob Myers, who's been wonderful. He started from day one. He's been helping me. And then I have Sharon, who is my overall campaign director. And I have 2 others that Lynette and Angela, who are also helping out. And then about a total of 10 to 12 that volunteers that throughout the community that go canvassing for us, phone calls, whatever that we need. They're there when we need them.
Oh, that's fantastic. So it sounds like a really, really small staff because it's shared, and also a relatively small number of dedicated volunteers as well.
Yes, it's a very. We were discussing it the other day. A lot of people are talking about grassroots. We were saying, well, we're a tumbleweed, and and so we're just barely starting. And one of the other things that being a true grassroots campaign with Felicia, Wade, and myself is we wanted to give the people an opportunity. And so one of the things that giving the people an opportunity is we decided to open up an office here in Holbrook. And since we have been talking about opening up the office in Holbrook, people have been calling on me, asking for my yard signs, asking for the Felicia and Wade yard sign. People are really getting involved and getting engaged because this is the first time that they can really see and touch a campaign. And so it's been really, really exciting these last few days for the people of the community because one gentleman said it the best. He said, Bobby, he said, we really need to look at things. He said, because you're not running for Arizona State House. He said, Holbrook is running, and you're going there to represent us. And so it's just been tremendous support here in a small little rural community, just from opening up an office.
Oh, that's great. Felicia, anything to add?
Yeah, no, like Bobby said, we are just it's very, very remote. When we say rural, we mean remote rural. It's not like a suburb of a big city or Phoenix or something like that. So we're just all over the place doing door to door, trying to and get votes, get people to meet, especially both being first time candidates and beyond a city level. Bobby is the mayor of Holbrook. But beyond Holbrook, that is not as well known, and I'm definitely not known at all, other than my little small town of Pine here. And even then, people sometimes in these remote areas keep to themselves quite a bit. So you go knocking on doors, they sometimes at first, even though I'm always walking my dogs and running and hiking all over the neighborhood, they don't know who you are. So very important that we get out there door to door.
Absolutely, that's great. So just a couple of specific questions that's helpful for the volunteers to get a sense of how the campaign's doing. 2 questions specifically. What is your budget for your campaign? And then how are you doing in terms of fundraising for that campaign budget? Like, do you have any milestones or deadlines coming up that are really critical? Just for us to get a better sense of how you're doing from a financial standpoint.
Oh, on financial, right now, Felicia's and our budget is around, I want to say around
88 is what we calculated to get. We should be getting the.
And so some of our deadlines that of course we have coming up is, of course, we want to get out a bunch of our mailers. We have that's coming up here later on here today. I will get an estimate of what my mailers are going to be. That will be our first deadline to try to get that out by.
Well, before that, the primary is the 10th I'm sorry, the early mail-in ballots are 10 October. So we're trying to get them out at least a week before that.
Okay. Great.
Yeah, and our budgets are mostly at this point we're doing well fundraising. Thank you to Sister District greatly. We're doing well, but we really looking at doing more mailers. Can't overemphasize the ruralness of this area. A lot of people don't have internet access or they don't pay attention to it. So we do need to get mailers out for those that don't pay attention to Facebook or social media. So we want to get the mailers out, and as many as we can for the mail-out ballots, then at the mail-out ballot, and then after. And also as a team and individually, we send out the mailers, and also palm cards. When we go door to door, we have to have something in hand. So those are all expensive. And the digital aspect, we're looking at, because there are still people, even though we're rural, like the Flagstaff Pace Snare, that do use social media quite a bit, Facebook and Twitter and texting. So and it costs money to do all those things. And so we really, really have to, since we can't get out everywhere, we have to rely on those as well, or to supplement us getting out everywhere.
Sure.
And some of the important dates that we have coming up is September 22nd, we have The military and the overseas ballots have to be mailed out. October 9th was the voter registration deadline. October 10th was the early voting began. October 26th would be the last day to request an early ballot and to be mailed. The suggested deadline is October 31st for the early ballots. And then, of course, the general election would be November 6th.
Yeah, so I think we're only about, we're just over 50 days out from the election. So it's already less than 2 months away. So it's definitely coming up pretty fast. A quick question about those mailers that you mentioned, because it's such a rural district and it's important to communicate with your voters that way. In total, for if you do all the mailers, how many pieces of mail would you be sending in total for your campaign?
That was going to be our. I have a meeting here at 11 o'clock to discuss those pieces. I think they were talking. Correct me if I'm wrong, Felicia. Around 30 to 40,000 pieces, or 20 or something in that range. I wasn't for sure with the numbers yet. Yes.
Yeah, we're looking at 15 to 20,000 homes, and then multiply that by how many times we want to get them out for those different dates. So at minimum 4 times. 15 times 20,000. So on the high side, 20,000 times 4, and then another. We'd like to do it 7. Ideally, most elections in a normal, less rural area, you go 7 mailers. Mm-hmm. So we're trying to get as many as we can at a minimum 4, ideally 7 times 20,000. So that adds up because each set is like 10 to 15,000 to send out.
Exactly. Yeah, that's actually a lot of mailing pieces. And but you haven't sent the first mailer yet, right? So that's still coming up.
That's still coming up.
All right, fantastic. And do you know what the target is for getting that first mailer to hit the mailboxes?
It's supposedly going to hit on the 9th of October. We'd like to have gotten it done earlier, but circumstances, because we are also spread out. As Bobby's speaking to you from Holbrook, I'm from Pine. Getting us together, doing the photo shoots and all that stuff, coordinating for all the candidates was a little difficult. And then getting the folks that do it for us out there is hard to get us in a date that we're all available. So a little bit later than we wanted it to be, but it should get there by 9 October, and the mail-in ballots go out in 10 October and hit the mailboxes. So hopefully they'll have our flyers in hand when they get the mail-in ballot together so they can coordinate the two.
Great, great. And then once those mailers are created, will you be using the art from those mailers for digital promotions as well, and reusing the content that way?
Yes, that's the plan. We want to save money as much as we can, use what we have.
Fantastic. All right, super. Well, let me ask you very quickly a couple other campaign details. Would you say that the mailers are the most expensive component of your campaign?
I would say so, Bobby, wouldn't you? I mean,
well, yeah. The mailers have been a very a large portion of our budget, and then also the next one would be our yard signage.
Okay. And then, do either of you have a position with regard to corporate donations specifically?
Bobby,
oh yes. I haven't received any corporation donations from any corporations.
Yeah. And same here. I won't take any from. I have about almost 20 endorsers right now, and all of them are corporate, not corporations, businesses, nonprofit organizations, I should say, that are in line with my values. So otherwise, I wouldn't want endorsement from somebody else. I did have NRA did send me a mail, an endorsement, but of course it was like 15 pages. They're the only ones that actually mailed something out, and I didn't fill it out.
Yes, they send one to me as well. I worked 30 plus years for a coal-fired power plant here within the state. I haven't received any funding from either one of the companies.
Okay, great. That's good to hear. And then you said that you have 5 staff members that are part of the Arizona Democratic Legislative Campaign Committee that are supporting you. Are there other local Democratic groups at all in Arizona that are supporting you or endorsing you specifically?
Other than the White Mountain Dems, the Gila, but other than that, I don't have any. You, Felicia?
Yeah, the Coconino, the county Dems have all been very helpful. Our area covers 4 counties, and so it's Coconino, Navajo, Yavapai, and Gila, and so all those specific Democratic parties that are in those areas have been very helpful to our campaign.
Oh, and then also, what is Steve's group in Sedona?
Yeah, there's other.
Steve's and then also a speech group out of Sedona as well.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And are there any other specific local groups? Felicia, you mentioned some nonprofits were endorsing you. What other types of groups have been supporting your campaigns?
Well, because I'm a nurse, I have the Arizona Nurse Association, the Arizona Nurse Anesthetist Association, and I'm an environmental science, sustainability scientist, so I have Sierra Club, and the other ones, Planned Parenthood, Emily's List, AZ List, the unions, several unions, and I don't want to forget anybody, so I don't want to say them all, but they are on my website. But there's about 20 of them now, and of course, Sister District Project is can't forget you guys.
Great. Bobby, anyone from your community that you want to do a shout out for?
Oh yes, Sister District. Thank you. You guys have been awesome. Sister District. You're probably you're about one of the first to endorse me. Since you endorsed me, I've received endorsement from Arizona Pipe Trade, Arizona Trades Association, the Millwright Union, Planned Parenthood, the Sierra Club, Moms Demand Action,
Yes.
America Federal and State and County Municipal Workers, Flippable Equal Means Equal. Also, I have a couple of letters sent out to the Nurses Association and also on the Teamsters.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's really great.
I do want to mention, I can't forget the veterans organizations. I feel horrible that I forget them. Vote Vets has endorsed me, and Serve America, and as well as Moms Demand Action, and all the organizations that are near and dear to our heart that share our values have been endorsing us, and I'm really proud of that. And Flippable too, of course, and MoveOn.org. Can't forget that. I hope I covered everyone.
Really great. So last question about the campaigns, actually last 2 questions. The first is, who else are you coordinating with? Obviously you're running on the same ticket, but are there other candidates, Democratic candidates, that you're working closely with? So that's the first question.
Yes, and that's a very good question. Here locally, we're working with Wade Carlisle, who's running for Senate. Other local candidates that are running, we've been working with the candidates from LD7. Also, Senator Peslakai has been a lot of help out of 7 as well. Mayor Evans in Flagstaff has been a lot of help. Can you think of some more, Felicia?
Yes, and of course, Dr. Brill running for Congress, and Tom O'Halloran also running for U.S. Congress. They cover our district too, because they're different districts, but they overlap ours. So there's 2 separate U.S. congressmen that right now that are covering our area. So they've been very helpful as well.
And that was one of the things we've been sharing with a lot of the voters, because when you're not a career politician, and you're sharing your views and you're sharing your platform, they ask you all the time, how can you make a difference? And so those are one of the things that we've been talking about. We're not afraid to reach across the aisle, to talk to other people, to start building and working with our state legislators who are sitting in office right now. And so we built that relationship. We're building a relationship with the candidates that are running. So when we get there on day 1, we have our running spikes in and we're ready to work.
That's super. That's great. So last question on the campaign. This is probably going to be the hardest question we covered today. What do you think is your single biggest challenge in running for the House of Representatives?
Name recognition.
Hmm.
I feel that our name recognition, because we're not a Goldwater. We don't have those names. But it's a big obstacle, but really it's not, because that obstacle has been taken away, because now that people are looking at what they're doing when they sit down at the table to write their bills and to pay their bills. And so now they see that Felicia, myself, and Wade are their neighbors, and we are concerned. And so that big hurdle has been taken away because of the way the situation is today.
Great. Felicia, your perspective on the biggest challenge you see?
That name recognition, obviously, combined with the fact that our district is 38, almost 38% Republican, 28% Democratic, and approximately 34% independent and other. So it makes it very difficult to run as Democrats, because we not only need to get every single Democrat out to vote, we need to get some independents out there too, and as well, hopefully Republicans. Like I said earlier, at the end of the day, whoever gets elected, you're representing the people everyone in your district, not just the people who voted for you.
That's a great point. And thank you for sharing that and being frank about, the challenges you're facing in your campaign. So the last set of questions I had for you is really simple. It's really more about how we at Sister District Project can be a resource for you and supportive to you. So if you're thinking about, we do a lot of phone banking for you, and we'll continue to do phone banking. And we're very excited. We've set 2 weekends that we're going to come out and do some canvassing as well in October. So we're all very excited about that. But whenever a Sister District volunteer has the opportunity to speak to a voter in your district, can you tell me one thing that each of you wants to make sure that the Sister District volunteer conveys to that voter in a conversation that they might have?
You cut out there just a little bit. Can you repeat it?
Oh, sure. What I was asking is, when Sister District volunteers speak to voters in your district, either through phone banking or when we come and canvass, if there were only one thing that you wanted to make sure that that volunteer conveyed to the voters in your district, what would that one thing be?
Vote down the ticket.
Yeah.
That's great.
Vote down the ticket. What do you think, Felicia?
That too, and for both of us, I know Bobby agrees with us, we all do. Education is our priority. Sustained funding of public education is key, and we are passionate about it. I, as a mother, as an educator myself, and here in Arizona, that we're so low on the totem pole across the board in funding public education compared to the rest of the country, and it's been very problematic. And our teacher salaries, the grades, the graduation rates across the board in almost every measurable category for talking about public education, that we are just extremely pro funding of public education.
So, and speaking of that,
go ahead.
Go ahead, Bobby.
I was just wanted to it's for Felicia. We just made a saying how important education is and how important voting down the ballot is. And so when you look at those two statements, you can't have one without the other. And so that's how important it is.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and speaking of that, when you're talking to your constituents, and when we as volunteers is everyone pretty familiar with the Red for Ed campaign? Is that like something that has like strong public awareness?
Yes, it has a lot of awareness, a public awareness here. We were just, what was it, 2 weeks ago? It was taken off the ballot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's in our area. Yes, most people are familiar with it. It's very popular here. But I was just canvassing 2 days ago in Snowflake, and I'm sorry, in Heber, and a woman said to me that she was all for public education funding, but she didn't like the way they went about it. She didn't think it should be taxing more people and taxing the rich. So we had a long discussion about that and how important education is, and it's got to come from somewhere, and and explaining the taxes and how it helps everyone. I don't know if I persuaded her. I felt like I did, but that was one of her issues. That's the first time I've heard anyone, and honestly, in all the year that I've been canvassing, actually say that they didn't like it, the taxing more taxes for education. But the rest have all been very much on board on, hey, if that's what it takes to tax us, they're willing to pay more taxes in order to fund public education, which I found very heartwarming, because didn't matter the number of people that were, I'm laughing because there's somebody behind your door. It didn't matter the number of people that were who they are taking the money from, which is taxes in general.
Yeah. Yeah, and actually you're working really to restore funding. So you're not trying to increase funding. You're actually trying to bring it back to a level that it was in the past. So
correct. Yes.
Yeah. So, okay, so the last question, a couple of questions. We've been doing phone banking, and as I said, we're going to do some canvassing. How does your campaign feel about text banking? If that were something that were available, would you be open to it?
You said text messaging?
Text banking, yeah. So phone banking, but via text message.
Yes, it with the college and well, Anna.
my daughter.
Yeah, we got to pull Anna into this one.
Yeah, my daughter, who's my communications director, I spoke about earlier.
Yeah, so text banking is something we're definitely interested in. A group called Tech for Campaigns is going to be helping us with that, but we'd be happy to have more people on board, because we've read the statistics on how effective the response rates are on text messaging versus the phone banking. So as far as getting out the vote through text reminders and things like that, and building conversations and relationships with voters via text, we'd be open to having more volunteers doing that.
Great, great. Okay, and then in terms of canvassing, when we do that in the end of October, and this is the last question really, do you think folks in your district would be comfortable with folks coming in and canvassing on your behalf?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes, I second that motion. Yes, they definitely would, but I'd prefer them to go in the areas to get out the vote instead, because I don't think it'd be as receptive in the rural areas, more remote areas. And so I think like the Flagstaff, Sedona, Verde Valley area, it would be much more impactful to have somebody from outside of Arizona coming in to help us canvass.
And here and over on this side, I would make myself available to go.
Oh, excellent, excellent.
But, yeah.
Well, that's great to hear. Yeah, and our focus would definitely be on get out the vote. And again, Sister District Project's model is really to support the campaign. So you tell us what you need and what is helpful to you. And that's, what we would try to fill in terms of offering resources from our volunteer pool. So I think those are all the questions I had today for the call. And I know you're super busy, and I don't want to keep you too long. If there's any closing statement you'd like to make or anything you'd like to say to wrap up. But otherwise, I thank you, Bobby, and thank you, Felicia, very much, not only for being available today for this interview, but joining us in San Francisco not too long ago, and for really dedicating yourselves and putting yourselves out there to run for the state House of Representatives and to support the constituents in your district who really need your voice at the state capitol.
Well, thank you, Ms. Natalie. And in closing, we want to say thank you for all you've done, for all you're doing, because we couldn't do this without your help. Like we had mentioned last week, for our sister state to be so caring and devoted to us to make sure we get the process right. Thank you. Thank you for all you do. Thank you for thinking about us. And we're going to continue to fight and work hard for you. And thank you, Sister District, for your support.
Yes, I want to, Natalie, and I want to thank you and Sister District from the bottom of my heart. It really does motivate me. It's like a little rays of sunshine charging my solar panel here of energy to continue going. It's heartwarming to know, like our sister state, that cares enough to help us out and sees the need for that, and to support us and with their time and their interest. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. And that ends the broadcast. I'll end it right now, and then we'll just wrap up right after the call. So thank you both. And thanks for everyone who will be watching.
Thank you, Sister District.